Montana Territory, November 1883. The most respected livestock man in Beaverhead County stood outside a limestone cave entrance, shaking his head. He spoke loud enough for the gathered homesteaders to hear and said this was the most dangerous thing he had ever seen a settler attempt. Inside that cave, a woman named Sarah Hendricks was building what everyone called impossible, a winter stable carved into the mountain itself. On that cold day, mockery hovered in the air, and no one believed the ground beneath their boots was about to rewrite everything they thought they knew about surviving winter. Sarah Hendricks arrived in Beaverhead County in the spring of 1882 with her husband, 2 horses for mill work, and a small herd of sheep. The land was harsh but promising, and like many before them, they believed hard work and tradition would be enough. By her second winter, that belief collapsed. Her husband died from pneumonia, leaving Sarah alone at 41 years old, running the homestead herself in a country that rarely forgave mistakes. The standard method for livestock survival was clear and unquestioned. Ranchers built timber frame barns, filled the gaps with mud and moss, stacked hay bales against the north wall for insulation, and prayed the animals survived until April. Every rancher followed the same plan, and every winter brought the same results. Barn walls cracked in the cold. Wind slipped through every gap. Inside temperatures stayed barely warmer than outside. Water froze solid. Feed consumption doubled as animals burned energy just to stay alive. Newborn calves and lambs died within hours. And losing 15 to 30% of livestock each winter was considered normal, the accepted cost of mountain living. Sarah's first winter nearly destroyed her. 3 sheep died. 1 calf was lost. Her 2 horses dropped so much weight she feared losing them both. By February, she had burned through her entire woodpile and had to barter labor for more just to keep going. The barn she had inherited was built exactly the way everyone said it should be, and it was killing her animals as surely as the open range. By March of 1883, Sarah made a decision that would either save her or ruin her completely. A quarter mile from her cabin, a limestone ridge rose 30 feet above the valley floor. Erosion had carved a natural cavity into the rock, about 12 feet deep, 20 feet wide, and 9 feet tall at the entrance. Local hunters used it sometimes for shelter. Sarah saw something different. She saw stability, constant temperature, protection from wind, strength no wooden barn could ever match. She did not have words like thermal mass or geothermal stability, but she understood the idea. The earth held heat. It did not react to sudden cold. It stayed steady while everything else suffered. She believed the ground itself could do the work her barn never could. In April, she began hauling tools to the cave. By May, neighbors noticed. By June, the criticism started. Ranchers told her she was wasting time on a hole in the ground. They warned her it would trap moisture, rot feed, and suffocate her animals. Sarah kept working. She had 6 months before winter returned, and she refused to lose another animal to a system that had already failed her. But her plan was careful and exact. She widened the cave entrance to 16 feet, shaping it so air could move without letting wind blast straight inside. She carved a shallow trench along the floor to guide meltwater away from the animals. Just inside the entrance, she built a low stone wall, 18 inches high. Cold air would sink and collect there, then slide back outside instead of flooding the stable. The back of the cave, where the ceiling dropped lower, became feed storage. Hay bales were stacked to the stone roof. Grain bins were placed into natural pockets in the limestone. The middle section became the animal space, with room for several head and tie points carved directly into the rock. For ventilation, Sarah chiseled 2 narrow shafts near the ceiling, angled upward toward natural cracks in the ridge. Yet warm air would rise and escape. Fresh air would enter low and slow. No drafts, no wind, just steady movement. The cave held a near constant temperature year-round, around 45 to 50 degrees Fahrenheit. While outside air could swing wildly in a single day, the stone barely changed. Sarah reinforced the entrance with salvaged timber, not to hold the cave up, but to build a double door system. A rough plank door on the outside, an inner door layered with canvas and wool. The airspace between them added another barrier against cold. The cost was small, $40 in hinges, nails, and canvas. 4 months of hard labor, mostly digging, leveling, and drainage. Then came the part that truly shocked everyone. Sarah planned to keep her animals in the cave from November through March. No pasture, no open-air exercise. Just stone, a feed, and patience. By October 1883, the cave stable was ready. That was when the confrontation came. On a cold Saturday in early November, Franklin Graves rode out with 2 other ranchers to check on the widow. They found Sarah moving hay into the cave, her horses already standing inside. Graves looked into the darkness, then turned back, his jaw tight. He told her plainly that what she was doing was reckless, and that when her animals died, people would remember they had warned her. Another rancher called the cave a trap. Animals needed light and air, he said. Graves went further, questioning what would happen if the ceiling cracked or the spring melt flooded the trench. Then his voice dropped, and the words cut deeper. He told her she was not a rancher, just a woman trying to do a man's job with a foolish idea, and that she should sell the land before she embarrassed herself further. Sarah stood at the entrance and listened. When she finally spoke, her voice was calm. She said she had done the math, tested the airflow, measured the temperature, and made her decision. She told them they were welcome to come back in spring and see who was right. As they rode away, laughter followed them down the trail. By mid-November, Sarah's cave stable had become the joke of Beaverhead County, and winter was only just beginning. December 1883 arrived quietly, but the cold did not waste time. By the second week, daytime temperatures struggled to reach 10 degrees Fahrenheit. Nights dropped to -15. Snow fell steady and heavy, covering the valley in white silence. Across Beaverhead County, the ranchers slipped into the same exhausting routine they followed every winter. Ice had to be broken from water troughs twice a day. Extra hay was hauled non-stop. Barn walls were checked for new cracks, and firewood disappeared faster than anyone wanted to admit. Sarah Hendricks lived a different winter. Each morning, she walked from her cabin to the cave, opened the outer door, then the inner one, and stepped into cool, steady air. She checked her animals calmly, then glanced at the mercury thermometer hanging from a beam. 46 degrees in the morning. In the evening, it climbed to 48. Outside, the cold bit like a blade. Inside the cave, the animals stood dry and relaxed, their breath barely visible. She hauled water once each morning. It stayed liquid all day. Hay stayed dry. No frost crept along the walls, and no wind howled through gaps. The stone absorbed the cold and gave back nothing but calm. While other ranchers watched feed supplies vanish, Sarah noticed something strange. Her animals were eating less. They were not burning energy to survive the cold. They were simply living. Her horses held weight. Her cows stayed steady. Her sheep slept in small piles, clean and quiet. Then January came, and winter showed its teeth. On January 9th, a blizzard rolled down from Canada. Winds hit 40 miles per hour. Snow buried fences and blocked doors. The storm lasted 4 days. Temperatures fell from -28 to -31. On the night of January 12th, the valley bottomed out at -37 degrees Fahrenheit. All across Beaverhead County, panic took hold. Barn doors froze shut. Animals shivered so hard their bodies shook. Ranchers burned hay just to create warmth. Some slaughtered weak animals rather than watch them freeze. Franklin Graves lost 11 head of cattle in 2 nights. Cyrus Milford watched a barn wall split from the cold and spent hours outside, trying to patch it with numb hands. At Sarah's cave, the thermometer read 44 degrees. The stone did not care about the wind. The earth did not react to the cold. 20 feet of limestone stood between her animals and the killing air. Inside, horses stood quietly. Cows chewed feed. Sheep slept, dry and still. At the cave held steady, just as Sarah believed it would. When the storm finally broke on January 13th, the valley looked dead. Snow lay thick and frozen. Smoke rose thin and weak from scattered homesteads. Sarah stepped outside, felt the brutal cold, then returned to the cave and checked the thermometer again. 43 degrees. She wrote the number in her ledger without emotion. Her animals had not noticed the worst cold snap in a decade. The first person to visit after the storm was her nearest neighbor, Catherine Dorsey. Catherine had lost chickens and a goat and had feared for her children when the fire burned low. She rode in expecting disaster. Instead, she found Sarah hauling water, animals visible inside the cave. Calm and healthy, Catherine stepped to the entrance and stopped. She asked how warm it was inside. Sarah answered simply, 43 degrees. Catherine walked in and felt the air herself. Cool, but dry. The hay smelled fresh. The animals looked better than her own had before the storm. She asked about feed. Sarah showed her the ledger. 12 pounds of hay per head per day. Horses holding weight. Cows producing milk. No losses. Catherine did the math and realized her own animals were eating nearly 20 pounds per head just to survive. Sarah was using far less and losing nothing. Catherine left shaken. She told others what she had seen. By early February, Franklin Graves rode out himself. This time he brought a thermometer and a notebook. Sarah let him in without a word. Graves walked the length of the cave, checked the ventilation shafts, studied the drainage trench, and stood watching the animals for several long minutes. Yet he hung his thermometer beside Sarah's. Both read 45 degrees. Outside, it was 8 degrees. He asked about hay. 870 pounds since November. He asked about water. 1 trip per day. No freezing. He did the numbers in silence. In a standard barn, those animals would have eaten far more, and some would already be dead. Graves finally spoke, his voice stripped of pride. He admitted her animals were healthier than his. He admitted she had burned no firewood. He admitted he had been wrong. Sarah only nodded. Within a week, other ranchers came. They did not laugh now. They measured. They asked questions. By mid-February, one man had already started carving his own cave into a nearby ridge. By March, others followed. The joke had vanished. Numbers replaced opinions. The cave stable was no longer foolish, but it was proven. And when word spread through Beaverhead County, something deeper began to shift. Tradition was cracking, just like the barn walls that winter had split apart. Men who had laughed now watched carefully. The widow they dismissed had not argued. She had simply survived. But this winter was not over yet, and the real impact of Sarah Hendricks's decision was only beginning to show. Wait, before we move on, what do you think about the story so far? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'm really curious to know. When March arrived, the snow began to pull back from the valley, slow and heavy, like it was tired of fighting. Ranchers stepped out of barns filled with loss. Dead animals were dragged away. Feed stores were empty. Families sat at tables doing hard math and realizing how close they had come to ruin. While then they looked toward one homestead where no smoke had risen all winter from a stable fire. Sarah Hendricks opened the cave doors and led her animals out into the weak spring light. They did not stagger. They did not limp. Her horses held their weight. Her cows were pregnant and calm. Her sheep were thick and clean. They looked better than they had before winter began. Across the valley, people noticed. Franklin Graves was the first to speak publicly. At a late March community meeting, he stood in front of 24 ranchers and said he had been wrong. He said he had checked the numbers, walked the cave, and seen the results with his own eyes. He told them they would be fools not to learn from Sarah Hendricks. The room went quiet. Graves was not a man who apologized. His words carried weight. Howard Pitts, and the builder who had warned of moisture and collapse, visited the cave in April. He brought tools and doubt. He left 2 hours later with notes. He admitted no barn he had built could have performed like this. He told Sarah she had not been guessing. She had been engineering. By the next winter, 7 homesteads in Beaverhead County had some version of Sarah's design. Some carved full caves. Others built timber barns backed into stone, using earth as a shield instead of fighting it. Feed losses dropped. Water stayed liquid. Livestock lived. A territorial report in 1886 quietly noted the rise of earth-sheltered livestock housing and improved winter survival rates. No celebration, just facts. The social change was slower, but deeper. Sarah was no longer the widow hiding in stone. But she was the woman new settlers were told to visit if they wanted to survive winter. She never patented the idea. She never chased wealth. She kept refining her cave, kept her animals alive, and kept trusting results over opinion. A journalist visited years later and called it the cave that outlasted tradition. By then, many forgot it had ever been controversial. It was simply how smart people built. Sarah had not invented the Earth's stability. She had only stopped ignoring it. When the cold came, when -37 degrees tried to kill everything in its path, the stone held, the animals lived, and laughter disappeared. She did not win an argument. She won a winter. And in Montana Territory, that was the only victory that mattered. Tradition is not truth. Visibility is not performance. The frontier rewarded results, not pride. Sarah Hendricks understood that when others did not, and the lesson still stands for anyone willing to see it.